Spring, 1959, Quang Nam Province. The air was heavy with dust and silence. Villagers recall a hut of bamboo, its single lantern burning at hours when every other light had gone dark. Inside that hut sat a farmer named Thai Ngoc. His eyes were open, always open. He had not slept in decades. The records disagree on the first night he lost his rest. Some say it was after a fever in the early 70s, a sickness that left him sweating and shaking for weeks. Others blame the war, the shell fire that cracked the mountains, the sound of bombs that split men from their dreams. But whichever year you choose, one fact stands. After the fever, after the thunder of guns, he never slept again. Doctors wrote it plainly. Provincial files describe a man immune to sleep. Sedatives failed. Darkened rooms changed nothing. He sat calmly, eyes open, pulse steady, unblinking as the hours rotted away. Subject Ngoc, 42. Reports complete insomnia, physically functional, no fatigue observed. But the villagers spoke in whispers. They said he wandered fields at midnight, barefoot, carrying a lantern that seemed never to dim. They said if you stood close, you could hear his lips moving, though no words formed, like a prayer whispered to something not present. They said he smelled of rust and earth, a sour stench that followed him even into daylight. Children swore his eyes glowed faint in the moonlight. Some swore his shadow lagged behind him by a beat, as if something else was catching up. Medicine cannot explain it. 72 hours without sleep breaks the human mind. Muscles falter. Hallucinations devour sense. Yet Ngoc's body worked as if tireless. He farmed. He hauled water. He lifted stones. He carried grain through the fields by day and sharpened tools through the night. But there were incidents. Livestock gutted in silence. Never eaten, only torn. Dogs howling until their throats grew raw. Infants waking at the same hour, shrieking until dawn. A fire kindled in the communal rice store, but only the grain nearest Ngoc's hut turned to ash. The villagers could not prove it was him. But they could not prove it was not. And fear grows in silence. One merchant's diary from 1981 recalls passing Ngoc's field by lantern light. He swore he saw two silhouettes at work, one upright, one bent. But when he drew closer, only a single man stood in the dirt. A shadow delayed. A shadow out of step. Folklore began to spread. That when the fever burned his body, it burned his soul away. That what remained was only a shell, a vessel for something restless. Mothers warned their children not to stare at the moon too long, lest their spirits slip free, leaving them hollow and sleepless like Ngoc. The government tried to study him. Reports surfaced in Hanoi. Trials of sedatives, of herbal infusions, of forced isolation. Always the same. Eyes open, body steady, no collapse. But the records break off strangely. One file ends mid-sentence. Subject shows no decline after 3 days. Further attempts. The next page belongs to another patient. The continuation is gone, erased or hidden. In the village, the stories grew darker. They said Ngoc's presence brought famine. Crops withered where he stood. Pregnant women miscarried after crossing paths with him. Even when he did nothing, the air seemed to warp around him. Was it curse? Was it science? Or was it something that could not be named at all? The newspapers called it a curiosity, an oddity of medicine, nothing more. But diaries from neighbors say otherwise. I heard him whisper through the walls, not words, not language, but something pulling, something that wanted to be heard. A boy who spied on him claimed Ngoc never blinked, even when fireflies landed on his eyelids. Another swore that his lantern light cast no heat, no smoke, as if it was not flame at all, but a glow drawn from him. For 30 years he lived this way, awake, always awake. He grew older, but never slower. He worked while others slept. He ate with no appetite. He sat for hours with his eyes fixed on nothing, as though watching something no one else could see. Theories multiplied. Doctors said perhaps his brain had been damaged. his sleep cycle erased by fever. Villagers said perhaps his soul had fled, leaving him a hollow vessel. Others whispered of wartime experiments, soldiers molded into sleeplessness. But not everyone agreed, and not everyone was willing to write down what they truly believed. What is a man without sleep? Is he still a man? Or does something else move into the vacancy? One physician admitted privately, "I do not believe he has survived without sleep. I believe something has survived in his place." Decades later, Ngoc faded from official record. Some say he died quietly, body finally surrendering after so many years of restless wakefulness. Others claim no burial was ever seen, that his hut remained locked, mat unrolled, lantern cold but intact. Today, his story survives only in fragments. A handful of newspaper clippings, smudged reports, the hushed testimony of neighbours now old themselves. Yet the hut still stands, empty, silent, and children still whisper, if you stare at its windows too long, you may see eyes watching back. Eyes that have never closed. Perhaps you will dismiss this as rumour, as folklore. Perhaps you will explain it away as medical anomaly. But remember this, the body cannot live without sleep. The brain cannot function without dreams. And yet Thai Ngoc lived, worked, wandered, 30 years awake. So the question is not whether he was sick or cursed or a liar. The question is, what was he waiting for? And did it finally come? Maybe somewhere tonight, another soul walks the earth sleepless. Maybe somewhere a lantern glows when it should be dark. And maybe, as you listen, someone else listens too, eyes wide, never blinking. If this story unsettles you, subscribe to Dark History Fear and ring the bell. Comment below. What city, what country are you watching from? Because the sleepless man may not have been alone. And if you dare open the archives yourself, perhaps you'll find his name again.